Star Fox. What is a Star Fox? Is this a Star Fox? Is this a Star Fox? Star Fox is one of those Nintendo franchises that I've always been fascinated with. It oftentimes feels neglected by Nintendo, but it's also had a presence on almost every major console throughout Nintendo's history. It's had really strange development cycles where sometimes it starts as a different game altogether and then eventually becomes a Star Fox game. Sometimes they'll make a full game and then not release it until years later. The series has jumped between several different developers, and sometimes it feels like Nintendo doesn't really care about the series at all, but then every few years they'll be like, hey, yeah, what about Star Fox? We should make another one of those games, and then just like slap something together. But today I'm going to break down the whole series. We're going to talk about every game and try to figure out what is it about this series that is actually kind of appealing, and see if we can answer the question of like why Nintendo doesn't know what to do with this franchise, and maybe give some thoughts on what they maybe could do. Let's get into the start of the series. Back in the 90s, 1993. Nintendo is developing this additional hardware for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System called the Super FX chip. This will allow the system to process like early 3D polygonal graphics. While by today's standards this stuff might not look very impressive, this technology allowed what was basically a toaster to be able to display 3D imagery. This shit was so advanced that it would soon become completely obsolete in a couple years. And while they're working on this spaceship game, our boy Shigeru Miyamoto enters the picture. Boom! Miyamoto is a fascinating guy, and his contributions to both Nintendo and gaming as a whole cannot be understated, but he's also kind of a strange guy, and comes from an old-school Japanese way of thinking about things. Nintendo's a weird company, because they're not a gaming company, they're a toy company. They've been around for over 100 years, and just kind of happened to get into gaming in the 70s and 80s, when this new technology was becoming like more available. So some of the time they just do things that are weird and not at all like the rest of the gaming community. They're always making strange, unpredictable decisions that are always zigging when you think they're gonna zag, and Miyamoto is no different. However, he is crucial to what I think makes Star Fox as a series work. So Nintendo's working on this spaceship game, and Miyamoto comes in and he's like, what if they were foxes? Boom! See, Miyamoto liked to visit this kitsune or like fox shrine near the Nintendo offices in Japan, and it had like these little arches, these like arch things that you like go under to get to the shrine. And this actually inspired some of the level design of the first couple Star Fox games where you fly under these little arch things to get like rings and stuff, to get rings and power-ups. This gave the game this like vitamin B12 shot of Japanese mythology and ultimately just like this weird Nintendo personality, this charm that only Miyamoto could think of. Also, he was really into puppets. That's why I got Puppet Miyamoto here. He was into this old British show called The Thunderbirds, where it was like these puppet guys and they like drove these mechs, a little bit Power Rangers-esque. There was a movie in like the early 2000s that I watched a bunch as a kid, so that's also like a weird inspiration. Obviously you have Star Wars as an inspiration as well, and all of these things combine together to create Star Fox, the first game on Super Nintendo. Also, they have robot legs. They sort of move away from this in the character designs of later games. But in the first couple games, if you look at Star Fox team's legs, they're all robot legs. They have robot legs. And the concept behind this was that like it was like based on a pseudoscience of G-forces that I guess was a theory at the time. Basically, the theory was that like when you're in like a jet and you're flying around and doing loops and stuff, the G-forces are so intense that sometimes people pass out. And I guess the thought process was that it's like, oh, well, that's because your blood is like draining out of your head. But what if we chop off your legs? Then the blood won't have anywhere to go but to stay up in your head. So all the Star Fox team members, they're all amputees. They all have chopped off their legs for robot legs because it makes it so they can fly their spaceships better. Later, science would discover that that's not how that works at all, and chopping off your legs would not, in fact, make it easier to fly a plane. But it's a weird, archaic sci-fi concept that I really like, and again, adds to the weird personality of the Star Fox series as a whole. So anyways, you have Star Fox, the first game. Basically a Star Wars ripoff, but if Luke Skywalker was a fox that was a puppet and had robot legs. And the game itself is actually pretty fun. The main gameplay style would be obviously perfected in later games like Star Fox 64. But for the time, this was crazy advanced, and the bones of the core gameplay are there. I played this on the Nintendo Switch online service. While I don't see myself going back to playing it anytime soon, just because the gameplay is a little bit chunky and more dated than some of the later games, it's still very impressive for the time, and it's kind of cool to see the beginnings of what would be perfected in later games. Story-wise, this game also sets the precedent for a lot of the major recurring characters and story ideas that we will see in later games. You play as Fox, the part of the Star Fox mercenary squad. Yeah, they're technically mercenaries. This is a thing that sometimes comes up, because most of the time they just end up working for the main government of the Lilat system, the star system that they live in, who is at war with Andros, the bad guy. He's a big monkey face. In this game, he's just a big polygonal face who shoots pills at you. And yeah, I guess the money is good enough from the main core government that you get recruited into the Lilat wars, and you shoot a big monkey. You also have, of course, Fox McCloud, Slippy Toad, Peppy Hare, and Falco Lombardi, the main core Star Fox crew, who would go on to be in pretty much every game after this one. So yeah, all the main beats are set up in this game. And we will see that repeated many more times. But first off, Star Fox 2. This is the direct sequel to the first Star Fox game for Super Nintendo. It came out in 2017. So this game was slated to come out in 1995, and it was basically a direct sequel to the first game. They introduced some new characters. I think this is the first appearance of Starwolf. There's a couple other mechanics that end up getting reused in later games, like the R-Wings can transform into these chicken walker things for some of the levels. However, at this time in the 90s, Nintendo was also developing the N64, a full-ass 3D console. So this is what I mean by the graphics were so advanced that they almost immediately became dated, because by Super Nintendo standards, where most games are 2D, the graphics of the first Star Fox game were incredibly advanced. But by the time we get to N64, they look like garbage. So this game ended up being scrapped. However, it did eventually come out many years later in 2017 for the Super Nintendo Classic, this mini console. A bunch of hit games for the Super Nintendo. It was $100 or something when it first came out at Walmart or whatever. And it was released alongside that, which is cool because it's a full game that never got to come out, but eventually it did, and that's cool. So you can play it. It also is available on the Switch Online service, which is where I first played it. Not really. It's pretty good, and it's more of the same. There's some interesting mechanics where you're fighting against whoever the bad guys are in this one, and there's sort of different paths you can take. It becomes a little bit more like a strategy game. So there's some ideas there that end up getting reused later on. And it brings in some new characters to the Star Fox team. I forget their names. Let me look it up. Miyu the Lynx and Faye the Dog. They're part of the Star Fox team now. And because this game never came out, we never see them again. But anyways, we're in the N64 era. And that, of course, brings us to the big boy, Star Fox 64. I don't have a copy of this one. I never had an N64. So yeah, this is the big one. This is the one where they kind of figured out the formula and the gameplay. And it's a good game. It's really good. I don't have a hot take on it. I think it's great. This is 1997, so the N64 is well established. Nintendo knows how to make 3D work. And this game looks, for the time, is extremely impressive. Story-wise, it's basically a remake of the first Star Fox game. So We're 1.5 games in and we're already resetting the timeline. This will become a trend later on in the franchise. But yeah, this one basically establishes the formula that every other game will on some level try to replicate. So like I said, it's basically a repeat of the story of the first Star Fox game. You play as Fox and his teammates Falco, Slippy, and the other one, Peppy. They're all there. They're doing Star Fox stuff. They gotta fight Andros, who's a big monkey guy. If you get the true ending, you meet Star Fox's ghost dad, James McCloud. That's who I am. And he helps you use the Force to escape the exploding Death Star. First major encounter with Star Wolf in this timeline. Can't let you do that, Star Fox. Oh, and we have the like multiple paths thing, which was kind of in Star Fox 2, but is like more solidified here. Certain side objectives, or if you just do really well in certain levels, you'll get the opportunity to take different paths. This gives the game a very arcadey feel and also allows a lot of replayability because it's not very long. It's like 2 hours maybe total, depending on if you die a bunch, I guess. Yeah, and if you get the good ending, you get to fight Andros in his final form, where he's not just a big monkey head, he's a big giant brain, and you get an extended escape sequence with Star Fox's ghost dad. I first played this game in the 3DS remake, which came out in like 2011? Pretty much a 1-to-1 remake, but with some like updated graphics and stuff. Early on in the 3DS life cycle. This game, along with Ocarina 3D, really translated well to the 3DS because the N64 was playing with like being a 3D console. That meant that these two games were like really pushing the boundaries of what you could do in 3D, and they kind of worked really well for the 3DS that actually had like 3D visuals. So yeah, this game is really solid. One thing I do always find kind of annoying about it is that like there are different paths that you can go down, but the game doesn't tell you like how to do that. You just have to sort of figure it out. So there's like a few levels in this game that I've just like never played because I could not figure out how to get to them. We'll talk about this more later, but this also marks the first time that this game was remade, which again will become a trend going forward. But this brings us to the end of the 90s era, which means we're on to the 2000s. It's a new generation and we got a new console to talk about. This is Star Fox Adventures. Oh, you can barely see that. Can you see that? It's Starfax temperatures. Remember that? So this is a direct sequel to Star Fox 64 in terms of story, but this is also where the series starts to get really fucking wacky. So at this time, Rare, the developers behind Banjo-Kazooie, were making this game called Dinosaur Planet that was like sort of a Zelda-like adventure-style game, and it happened to star a fox guy. And so at a certain point during development, Nintendo was like, hey, we have got a fox. Put Star Fox into this. Make it a Star Fox game. And so it becomes Star Fox Adventures. Basically a Zelda-like. It's an adventure game. You're not really flying a spaceship for 98% of the game. Instead, you're doing dungeons and solving puzzles. You get a magical staff. It's just like a different kind of game altogether. A lot of people really hated this game because it's just not the same genre at all of 64 or the first game, and I can kind of understand that, but I also don't really like care if a series changes genres. Also, by the time I found out about this game, I'd already played Star Fox Assault, which is a return to the spaceship shooty shoots of 64. So I was like, oh, cool, a game that's like a completely different thing. So I went into this game really wanting to like it, is my point. And while there's some cool ideas in it, boy, is it just like so obvious that it was a different game and Star Fox got shoehorned into it. First of all, it's like a Zelda-like, which is fine because I really like Zelda. However, you do start to realize like how good Zelda is at doing that style of game and how turns out it's actually kind of hard to do that successfully. There are little details like, you know, whenever you get an item in Zelda and you get the little chest animation and it feels, the song is cool and it feels good and you're like, yay, I did it. In this game, whenever you get like a new item, it just plays the like most awkward animation ever and the song sucks and it just makes me laugh every time. It's so lame. It's a little awkward, things like that. There's also a bunch of like world building ideas that are like almost really cool. So you're Star Fox, right? You're Fox the Cloud. You're basically from a sci-fi universe, and you end up on this planet called Dinosaur Planet, very creatively named and totally fits within the world of the rest of the franchise. But on this world, there's just magic. There's just magic on this planet, and I think that's a fun idea that like one planet in their solar system happens to have magic, but the rest don't. So Fox is like kind of out of place in this game. I think that's actually kind of an interesting concept, is to have this guy from a sci-fi world end up on a fantasy world and like have to figure out how to navigate that. However, there's just like all these little reminders that this was not the intention of the game. Like, for example, they talk about how the world itself has been split into different chunks, and so some of the different levels you have to like fly your R-wing to the different parts of the planet in order to like solve the dungeon there and then restore that part of that chunk of the planet to the rest of the whole, which is a really cool idea for a game setting. However, this idea is not present in the main game, like in the main world as you walk around. Like whenever you look up at the stars, it just looks like a regular ass sky. I think you even see the moon. I can't remember. But like, wouldn't it be cool to actually like show that in the game world? Like every time you look up in the sky, you see like chunks of this planet like floating there, but you don't. It's weird. And then also you meet this giant Scottish rock guy who can teleport you. And so sometimes you have to get to different parts of the world. You have to fly your spaceship. You have to physically fly your spaceship there. But then sometimes this big rock guy can just like teleport you with magic or whatever. And like, I think this guy is super goofy and charming, and I kind of like him. But also, if he could just teleport me around the world, like, what's the point of me having a spaceship at all? Oh, right, because this was a different game, and then they put Star Fox into it. Also, I never finished this game, because about 2/3 of the way through, or roughly around that point, there's this one QuickTime event that is so bullshit that I just did not finish the game. Basically, at the end of one of the major dungeons, you have to do this thing where it's basically like those Tony Hawk things where like you're grinding on a rail and you have to hold the stick left to right to balance. So basically, it's that, but for a full 60 seconds. That's right. Count that out. Count out 60 seconds. It's fucking long. While you're supposed to be like mentally fortituding yourself to protect against dinosaurs or these false images of dinosaurs or whatever nonsense it is. It's just like so frustrating and bullshit. There are many moments where you suddenly have to like really slam the stick one way or the other. I tried it many times. I spent multiple hours attempting this, and I was just, after a while, I was just like, I can't do it. I can't beat this game. This is too bullshit. It's stupid. I'm done. And it's like so annoying too, because there's this whole like QuickTime cutscene playing, but you can't watch any of the cutscene because you're laser focused on this tiny Tony Hawk balance thing, and the cutscene is supposed to give you clues onto like when you're gonna have to like go left or right, but you can't look at it because you're so laser focused on this. It's so stupid and bullshit. I did not finish this game because of this one QuickTime event. It was that bad. So as much as I wanted to like this game, and there are elements that I did, like it's fun to explore a dinosaur planet. Dinosaurs are always fun and cool. Overall, I don't think it works. However, this game is significant for introducing us to one of the major characters of the franchise as a whole, and that's Crystal, a fine piece of furry bait from a more civilized age. Again, a character from originally designed for Dinosaur Planet. Crystal is like this hot princess chick that you have to rescue. You do play the game as her very briefly at the start. She, I think, is actually canonically from like a different planet, and she's like an orphan or something, and ends up on Dinosaur World because she's trying to like help it or whatever. I don't remember. They don't explore her backstory that much. They definitely don't explore it in later games. But just look at this design. It's insane. I kind of love it because it's so transparent what they're doing. The game really wants you to know how hot she is. When Fox first meets her and she's like trapped in this crystal or whatever, they play this like smooth jazz that's like completely not at all like the rest of the soundtrack.
Wow, she's beautiful.
It's so stupid. I love it. And at the end of the game, Crystal actually ends up joining Team Star Fox, which brings us to Star Fox Assault. Boom! For some reason, I lost the box of my copy of Star Fox Assault, so instead, you just get a sexy picture of Crystal. Direct sequel to Star Fox Adventures, this one developed by Namco, another totally different studio, and this game decides to go back to more of the Star Fox 64 style of gameplay. So we actually have like on-rail shooting sections, dogfights, as well as some third-person stuff. It still acknowledges Star Fox Adventure. Crystal's now part of the main team. That game definitely happened. We get to see Dinosaur Planet again, but now you can like fly around in your spaceship actually. While it also calls back to the core gameplay of Star Fox 64, the one that everyone universally seemed to like. One of my favorite things about Star Fox Assault is like imagining that after Adventures, Crystal joins Team Star Fox and they're like, cool, you're gonna fly around in a spaceship like us. Which means you got to chop off your legs, and then her being like, "What?" and then Fox and company are just like, "Yeah, we all chopped off our legs and had robot legs so that we can withstand the G forces of spaceships, of spaceship doing barrel rolls and shit." And her just being like, I'm not doing that. What the fuck? Come on, Crystal, you gotta chop off your legs. It's the only way. It's the only way you can be part of of Team Star Fox." Her just being like, "That's not how that works. That's not how legs work." What? Anyways, this game is great. I think it's really solid. This is the first real Star Fox game that I played right in the GameCube era where I grew up playing games. And I think it fucking rules. I really love the balance of new ideas while also calling back to both the games that came before and doing the core gameplay of Star Fox 64. It tells a new story while still in the Star Fox world. This time there's the bad guys called the Aporoids. They're this like robotic hive mind that are bug themed, which I think is it's basically the Borg, but if they were bugs. It's a familiar sci-fi concept, but given the Star Fox flavor of animals in spaceships, and I think it really works. It also like progresses a lot of the characters forward. Peppy, who's the oldest member of the team, takes a step back. He's more of a like mentor figure in this one. So our main core Star Fox crew flying the main ships is Fox, Falco, Slippy, and Crystal. And this is like my core Star Fox roster. Peppy's still in the game. He still gets to tell you to do a barrel roll. He's older. He's not as much of a fighter. And the game like goes in lots of fun, what I think are really fun directions. There's a whole section where you end up teaming up with Star Wolf, who are the bad guys up to this point. The stakes feel super high. Peppy almost dies in the finale. It's just like a really solid, fun game. I like it a lot. Me and my brother also mess around with the multiplayer for this game like so much. The multiplayer is not necessarily like super good, but it is very sandboxy and really fun to play around in these like huge levels. Sure, the third-person shooting is kind of clunky, but I don't care. I like this game. The part where you're flying on the wing of the Star Wolf and shooting robot bugs while the Star Wolf theme plays, it's so campy and over the top. I love it. This game slaps, and I don't know why people don't talk about it more. It's like Nintendo also forgot that this game existed, because almost every time after this, they're just like, what do we do with Star Fox? I don't know. Do Star Fox 64 again. That was the only good game. No, this game was also good. What are you talking about? The next major game came out in 2006 for the DS. This was Star Fox Command, completing what I consider to be the Star Fox Assault trilogy of the early 2000s. Or maybe the Crystal trilogy. That would be actually, let's call it that. The Crystal trilogy of the early 2000s, with Adventures, Assault, and Command, all featuring Crystal as one of the main characters. And these are all direct sequels to 64. The main Star Fox timeline for many years until they started rebooting stuff. But this trilogy in particular is like a very specific time and place for the series that has since been neglected or forgotten. Star Fox Command. I don't really like this game. It has some interesting ideas. Basically, the core gameplay mechanic is it's all like touchscreen controls, and it has like almost like a RPG tactics, like Fire Emblem kind of approach to things, where you'll see like part of Fox. Oh no! Oh no! He's falling apart. I could fix you, Fox. I'm sorry. Who am I, Nintendo? I'm neglecting you. I gotta put you down for a moment, but you'll be back. Star Fox Command. It's all touchscreen controls. It plays kind of like an RPG tactics game, like Fire Emblem or something like that, where you see like part of the star system, and then you draw on the touchscreen where you want your ship to go, and then when you crash into another ship, you enter a like battle mode where you're flying around and shooting at them, but like with the touchscreen to aim, and the controls are just like not as tight as you want them to be because it's on the Nintendo DS and you're using the stylus to aim. It works better than it should, and like, you know, graphically it's one of the more advanced games on the DS, pushing what you think would be possible for a handheld system at the time. And it kind of brings back some of the concepts that we didn't see in Star Fox 2, where you're commanding your ship to go in different directions, and that leads to different paths, different levels, different stories. The bad guys this time are like the Frogmen or something. It's like the Frog Empire from Ben 10, I think. I think it's those guys. I don't remember. And the game also has like a ton of different story stuff. Bunch of new characters. Like Slippy has a fiance. Peppy has a daughter. He's like more retired at this point. Fox and Crystal have broken up at the start of the game, and she's off seeing Panther, who's part of the Star Wolf team introduced back in Star Fox Assault. They have a like hilarious interaction in that game where Panther shows up. He's like a new character for Star Wolf team, and he's just like, "Damn, girl, you fucking fine. Are you like seeing anyone?" And then in this game, like, they're kind of together at the start of it, and then there's like a bunch of different endings. One of them where Fox and Crystal get back together. One of them, she leaves him for Panther, and it's fucking hilarious. But the main core gameplay is like just frustrating enough for me to not want to replay it at all, which is kind of frustrating because part of the, like, what should be the appeal of this one is that it has like all these different story paths and different endings. The problem for me was mostly that the game is kind of long. You have these like long ass tactics missions where you're drawing a path to different guys, and then you gotta fight them in a little full ass level of you shooting with the stylus to aim, and then you do that some more, and then whatever, and then eventually you beat that map screen, and then you move on to the next level. And this happens like several times. So unlike Star Fox 2, which did have different paths you could go through, the game itself was like maybe 2 hours long. This game, long, but it's also structured in a way where, like, if you do kind of badly in the earlier levels, that means you're going to be less prepared for the later levels where things are harder. So if you like lose a couple lives throughout some of the early levels of the game, the last couple missions are going to be fucking hell, because now if you fuck up at all, you're done. So that's as far as I got in this one. The other problem with this game is that there's like not really anywhere to go from here, because number one, not a lot of people played this game because it was on the DS. If they made a game that took place after this and started addressing events from this one, it'd also be like, what are you talking about? Who are all these random new characters? Slippy's fucking married now? What's going on? On top of that, it has like several different endings, so you'd have to like either pick one or find a way to address the different endings of this game. So it unfortunately kind of run into a problem where, although these games have had like a consistent ongoing story up to this point, there's not a clear, obvious direction to go in after this one. On top of the game being not that good and very few people played it. Star Fox is almost completely absent from the Wii era, one of the only times there are 0 Star Fox releases on a major console. And then the next major game is Star Fox 64 3D in 2011. So this kind of brings us to the 2010s era. This is where Nintendo starts to really kind of struggle with like what to do with the series. We got a remake of the 64 on the 3DS, which is a pretty smart move. It had been long enough at this point that a lot of people like me, who grew up in the like GameCube era, hadn't played the original 64 game. and this was a great opportunity. You got to revamp the game with newer graphics, and it's a solid game that still holds up. In 2012, Sakurai ends up making a game called Kid Icarus Uprising, which at one point early on in development, they were playing with the idea of it maybe being a Star Fox game, which I think makes sense. It follows very similarly to the gameplay formula of Star Fox Assault, where you have both like on-rail, shooty, fly around sections, and then like on the ground, third-person, walk around, shoot stuff. And I feel like that formula would translate really well into a Star Fox game, but no such luck. Kid Icarus Uprising, great game, not a Star Fox game. Miyamoto had been kind of absent from the Star Fox series for a while at this time, but with the release of the Wii U, Miyamoto had stepped down from main CEO of Nintendo and instead was like, hey, I want to develop games again. This was really exciting at the time, since it had been like forever since Miyamoto had been the guy developing a game and had been more of a like behind the scenes producer kind of role. And he wanted to explore the Wii U's new control system to develop like new kinds of games. For a while, all that we had heard was that he was working on 2 different projects. One called Project Robot, which maybe later got reused into the robot minigame of the Nintendo Labo, that cardboard VR thing that was very weird and very Nintendo. And another game called Project Guard, which did eventually get reworked into a Star Fox game alongside Star Fox Zero for the Wii U, released alongside Star Fox Guard. This game was released in like a double pack in 2016 and had this really fun announcement video during the Nintendo Direct of that year, when those used to be fun and cool, where Miyamoto alongside Reggie and Iwata, rest in peace, took the form of puppets and then became Star Fox puppets to announce the new Star Fox game, calling back to how the original box art had puppets. This felt like a really exciting time. Brand new Star Fox game, plus a fucking new game that we knew that was just like a different genre altogether, that just released as a bonus thing and was developed by Miyamoto. So Star Fox Zero. It's not Star Fox, it's not quite 64, it's a new thing, sort of. Basically, it's a reboot of 64 with new gameplay mechanics and all new levels. Story-wise, it's just a hard reboot again. Oh no, it's Andros. He's threatening the Lilat system. You gotta be Fox, Falco, Slippy, and the other guy, and you gotta fly the R-Wings, and you gotta fight him, and he's a big monkey head, and you shoot him, and there's different levels along the way. Hey look, it's the Chicken Walkers from Star Fox 2. Remember that game that never came out? We're using those mechanics again, I guess. And it's got this brand new control scheme that's using the Wii U gamepad. Okay, so here's the thing about the gamepad. It's dumb. Apart from literally only game to use the gamepad well, which was Nintendo Land, no other game was able to use this gamepad successfully. Conceptually, there should be something there, because basically they took the Nintendo DS, a very successful handheld console, and then tried to translate it to their home console. What if you had a touchscreen, but you could play like a full game, but you had a touchscreen also? Or maybe you could play you could do different things on the touchscreen than on the main display TV thing. Conceptually, there's something there. Nintendo Land, for example, was able to use this mechanic in many different fun ways, and then no other game since then managed to make it work. I think the main problem is that while that works on like a DS, because like both the screens are right next to each other, when you try to translate that to the Wii U, whenever you're looking between the gamepad screen and your main TV screen, your eyes have to like adjust because they're at different like depths from where your eyes are. So it just never feels good in like real-time gameplay and have to look between two things. Which is why the only other times that like people talk about the Wii U gamepad being used well in games is like when you just had like the map screen or the item menu designated to the gamepad, so that it like freed up the HUD on the main game and you could see more of the game while still having access to your items and inventory and stuff. Like Wind Waker, for example, was like an excellent use of the gamepad, because you could just have all your items available on the screen here, and it was less clutter on the main display. Star Fox Zero tries to do a new innovative control scheme where you're flying around and you can see your full ship, on the main TV, and then on the gamepad, it's like a first-person view, and you're aiming more precisely with the gyro motion controls. And while it controls, like, well, like, it does what it's trying to do, it's just, like, annoying to play. Because, number one, like I said, you're constantly looking back and forth between the gamepad and the TV, and it just doesn't, like, feel good. There's just, like, a little bit of a disconnect every time you have to look between two things as your eyes adjust. And number two, the main core gameplay of Star Fox was never the problem. They figured out how to make it work, that you just kind of aim and move with the same control, and it just works. One of the beautiful things of Star Fox 64 is that it works on the clunkiest of controllers, an N64 or a 3DS. You can aim and move with the same stick, and it just kind of works. That was something that wasn't broken and didn't need to be fixed. And while there's like some kind of interesting mechanics, the game as a whole is just not as fun to play. Brings us to Star Fox Guard. Similar problem here. Completely different style of gameplay. This one's like a tower defense game. You play as Slippy and his dad, and they're working on this tower defense system. And it's almost Five Nights at Freddy's-esque, where on the main TV you have like different views of this starbase that you're trying to defend, and then like different robots or something come at you from different angles. And using the Wii U gamepad, you can like switch between different views, camera views, and then like, oh, there's an enemy coming, I'll shoot them. And then like, oh no, there's an enemy on the other side of the building, I'll switch to that and then shoot them from here. Again, kind of interesting gameplay ideas. I do appreciate that Miyamoto came back to game design at this time and was just like trying new stuff, but it just isn't as fun as I wish it was. And again, I think it also suffers from the same Wii U problem of having to like look between two different screens, and like your eyes need a split second to adjust every time, so that there's just a little bit of a disconnect, and it's hard to like really get into the gameplay. On top of that, it suffers a little bit from the Star Fox Adventures thing of like, we had this idea for a game and then we just kind of slapped Star Fox onto it because like, oh, we haven't used Star Fox in a while. How about a tower defense game? How about a Zelda-like? Who cares? At least this time we also got a like main style regular Star Fox game. Again, the only problem is that the controls in that are also not fun. And on top of that, now we're rebooting the series again for what is the second time, because remember, the series already got rebooted after the first two games, one of which didn't even release, with Nintendo 64. And this is basically now the third time that this story of like, oh no, Andross is the bad guy, and we gotta fight him as Fox, Slippy, Falco, and the third one has been told. And I feel like Nintendo's thought process at this time was like, well, who cares that the story's been told over and over again? We do that every single time with the Mario games and with Zelda. Ganondorf's the bad guy in every Zelda game. Bowser's the bad guy in every Mario game. Why can't Andross be the bad guy in every Star Fox game? And it's like, I don't think those are the same. First of all, Mario has like such little story that it truly does not matter. Plus, the levels are new every time, and the core gameplay is solid and consistent pretty much across every game. And Zelda, yeah, you also get really good gameplay pretty much across the series, all kinds of new dungeons and mechanics throughout the franchise. Also, in that game where the story is a bigger deal, they actually build it into the lore eventually, in both a very surface level, oh, this is just a legend that's been retold throughout history, but also if you get deeper into it, it's like, oh, well, Link and Zelda are like reincarnations, and they're constantly fighting this demon lord Ganondorf who gets resurrected every generation. With Star Fox, the game back on the 64 actually had like characters and voice acting, which was like still pretty new to gaming as a whole, and especially new to Nintendo at the time. And then they had 4 games in a row that like continued the story. And yes, they switched genres and gameplay styles throughout, but they did like advance what happened. So you go from having like 4 games and almost a decade of continuing stories to like, fuck it, who cares, just reboot the series again with Star Fox Zero. So while at the time I was rooting for these games because it was like it felt kind of cool that they released 2 games at once, Miyamoto was back in action, and like, hey, it's been a while for Star Fox, let's like maybe just kind of reboot back to ground zero. Unfortunately, I think this game ended up like kind of not really working for anyone. It ignores all the previous story that had been set up for the last decade of the series and reboots everything back to Star Fox 64 while introducing a completely new style of gameplay that just doesn't feel as good as that game felt to play. So you kind of end up alienating people like me who really liked this era of Star Fox, while also alienating people that liked the gameplay of Star Fox 64. This brings us to Starlink Battle for Atlas. Technically not a Star Fox game at all, it's actually a Ubisoft game. And specifically we're talking about the Switch version because that came with the R-Wing, this little R-Wing toy that I dropped earlier. This thing is fucking cool as hell. However, the game is a Ubisoft game, which means it's not that good. This was sort of at the tail end of the Toys to Life craze, the like Skylander, Disney Infinity type games that were coming out for a little bit in the early 2010s. And it was like trying to be like a new franchise spaceship game from Ubisoft. And in the Switch version specifically, you could play as Star Fox randomly for reasons. And it had like a bunch of extra missions related to Fox and company. You get to fight Starwolf, making the Switch version just like the better version of the game because it had more content. Because this was a multi-platform game, but only the Switch version had like the Star Fox toys exclusive to it. And like, these are cool. This game was not a success, and so I was able to pick it up for like $20 not that long after it came out, which is honestly not a bad price for what is like a really solid R-Wing toy. The thingies, the flaps move, you can lock the S-foils in attack position. It's even got a little fox inside it. It's great. I love it. This game is not amazing. The main core gameplay is pretty repetitive and very Ubisoft, like, oh, you gotta like do all the checkboxes and explore this open world that's like very repetitive. But it does have some fun Star Fox missions in it, and when you're like flying around in your spaceship doing dogfights against Starwolf, it's like kind of fun. And it had been a while since like a major Star Fox game at this point, so for $20 I got my money's worth. It also looked nice, so that was kind of cool. And yeah, Star Fox has appeared in like a few other things, like the Smash Brothers series, obviously. But this one I find significant because they like randomly pushed Star Fox for this Ubisoft multi-plat game that nobody cares about. So, again, fucking strange. Hey Ubisoft, you're making a space game. Want to put Star Fox in it? We put him in whatever nonsense we're working on at the time, so why not stuff that someone else is working on? But this brings us almost up to the present. It's been fucking a while since we've had a major Star Fox game. It's 2026 at the time of recording this, which puts it 8 years since Battle for Atlas, and 6 years since Star Fox Zero, until a little movie called Star Fox Mario Galaxy came out. And Nintendo randomly announces on Twitter, like a week before the movie comes out, that Star Fox is in the movie. Wow, that feels kind of like a major spoiler and something you'd want to save for the fans to experience in the theater. But nope, here he is. He's in the game. He's in the movie. He's played by Glenn Powell. You like Glenn Powell, right? Sure. Which, of course, got Nintendo fans speculating. Does this mean that there's a Star Fox game coming out soon? Why else would we put Fox in the movie? That feels like a pretty fucking random place to put him. Is this just Miyamoto being weird again? Hey, you're making a thing that's in space. Put Star Fox in it. I like that guy. He's my guy. But the speculation and rumors turned out to be true, because just a couple days before the time I'm recording this, Nintendo randomly announces a Star Fox game that's coming out in like a month. Star Fox. That's right. It's a remake of Star Fox 64 for the second time. Andross's attack is threatening the Lilat system again, and you gotta team up as Star Fox, Falco, Slippy, and the other one, and the fourth one, and you gotta team up as Star Fox, Star Falco, Slippy the Frog, and your dad, and fight Andross and save the galaxy. Wow, what an original story. We definitely haven't seen this 4 times already. I talked about this in my trailer reaction thing, which you can watch if you want, but also the designs look bad. I don't like them. Star Fox, checking in. Whoa, I don't think I like the designs. Instead of the like fun, campy, cartoony furry bait that the series has been known for, instead they go for like a very ultra realistic animal look for the characters, which makes them look a little bit like Fantastic Mr. Fox, except if he didn't have any like personality or charm to them. They just have these like dead live action Disney eyes to them, and I don't like them at all. There's also this like VTuber mode where you can like buy this Switch 2 camera and then use that to like make yourself look like Starfox in the voice chat or whatever. Maybe that's what they were thinking with like making the characters look more realistic, is then it would translate better to realistic human faces, but that doesn't make any sense to me, because as we've seen from every VTuber on Twitch, cartoony character designs actually translate kind of better to the VTuber aesthetic, if that's what you're going for, and are much more appealing to general audiences and perverts, which if you want to attract the furry crowd, that's what you should be going for. Did we forget about Crystal, the horny fox with big bazongas? What are we doing? Who is this for? I don't like it. On top of that, this is yet again another reboot of the series, which has now been rebooted 1, 2, 3 times. This is also the 3rd time we've told specifically the Star Fox 64 story. And yes, from the gameplay trailer, all the levels seem to be just one-to-one recreations of the Star Fox 64 levels, which is a game Star Fox fans have already played twice. Yes, graphically it looks nice except for the character designs, but I just am not that interested in playing levels I can already play on my 3DS. Give me something a little new, will ya? It's also a story that we've told yet again for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th time now throughout the franchise, which is like, now it's really fucking getting tired. I've seen some people call this game Star Fox 64 4, which is arguably true, since Star Fox Zero was also kind of a reboot of that game. But at least Star Fox Zero had like new levels and new control schemes. Sure, the controls weren't that good, but the levels were new. This is literally just the same thing again, but the characters look worse. There is some new like story content in this one. It looks like we're getting more like cutscenes between missions, so you get to see the characters interact with each other, which is something I would maybe care about if I liked how the characters looked, but they just like lost all of their appeal in the designs. I wish I was more excited for this one, but man, this ain't it, Chief. I don't care. And for it to come weirdly right after Fox's appearance in the movie, in the Mario movie, where he has this like overly cartoony design, which I actually really liked. I thought he was kind of a fun addition. To then go hard realism from that point is just so strange. When they made Donkey Kong more cartoony for the first movie, Nintendo was very much like, this is now Donkey Kong's design. He looks like this now, and that's how he looks in the new Mario Kart game, that's how he looks in the new Donkey Kong game, and people for the most part are like on board with Donkey Kong's more like expressive cartoony look. Why the heck would you make fucking Star Fox, a cartoon fox who flies a spaceship, look realistic? He looks weird. He didn't look that realistic in Starlink Battle for Atlas, where he's hanging out with humans, regular ass humans. That's part of the appeal for me of this game, is that like he just gets thrown into another game that has nothing to do with him. The juxtaposition of that is actually really fun. But there you have it. That's on the main Star Fox timelines. You got the original timeline of 2 games, the 64 timeline, which had 4 games, then the Zero timeline, which had these 2 games, and now the new timeline of Star Fox for Switch 2, which is just called Star Fox to make things nice and not confusing. Arguably, you could just put this over with the other 64 remake, I guess, if you wanted, but because they're like, oh no, there's new story content, it makes me feel more like a reboot to me, even though it is just the same fucking game again. I don't know. The exciting new chapter in the Star Fox series, a remake of a game that came out 29 years ago, and then again 15 years ago. Hooray! But there is some hope, maybe. Because at the same time that Nintendo was secretly developing a brand new Star Fox game, one of the original developers of the original one back on the Super Nintendo has gone and formed his own gaming company and is developing a brand new, totally original IP, Do Not Steal, called Wild Blue Skies. This is a game in the fine, I'll-do-it-myself genre of franchises like Yooka-Laylee, where some of the developers from the original game series spin off and make their own game that's essentially a spiritual successor to the one that you remember. At first I wasn't sure how to feel about this game, because I think that part of the appeal of Star Fox is that it has this weird sphere of influence. It's like a bunch of stuff combined together to make something new. The same reason I love Star Wars, which is a combination of all kinds of different elements of mythology and samurai movies and westerns, Wizard of Oz, Dune. Star Fox is a weird combination of Star Wars plus Japanese mythology, fucking robot legs and puppets. Where this game, this totally original, do not steal new IP of dog guy flying spaceship, and he's got a lizard teammate and a girl and what is he, like an ox or something? I guess he's kind of different. Is like very clearly just like influenced from Star Fox. It's sort of like some of the problems that I have with like The Force Awakens and stuff, where the original Star Wars was like a combination of different influences, and then Force Awakens, the influences were just Star Wars, so it just kind of felt like a watered down version of that. But this at least has like new fucking levels in it, and like a new art style that looks good. It has this like sort of 2D anime aesthetic to it, which I kind of dig. And yeah, as long as the gameplay is fun, then I have hope that this one will go on to develop its own kind of personality. I'm cautiously up towards this one, because oftentimes part of the problem with these games, like the first Ukulele, for example, which I haven't played, but from what I've heard, the first one is not that good because it's like trying to be Banjo-Kazooie, but then the second one turned out like pretty well because it was trying to be its own thing. So I hope that this one is not just like, hey, remember Star Fox? Let's do that. It manages to find a bit of its own identity. But at the same time, since Nintendo is just literally just doing Star Fox again, at least this one is fucking has its own like new levels and characters in it. So as much as it appears like Star Fox fan fiction, but we filed off the serial numbers a little bit, I'm a little more optimistic for this one since it will at least have like some new ideas. But what should Nintendo do? I've been complaining about what they've been doing and what they have done, but I'm not offering any solutions. So here's my top 3 pitches for how to make a good Star Fox game. Number 1, bring back the puppets. Again, like I was saying, part of the weird charm of the first game is that they used these weird-ass puppets for the box art, and then they referenced the puppets again back in 2016 when they were working on Star Fox Zero. And we've seen lots of different games and movies and animation like take on different elements and mixed media in recent years. Like recently, there was this puppet game where it's basically Punch Out, but you play as a little puppet guy. All the animations are like puppets punching each other, and I think that's such a weird mix of ideas. What if we have to do Star Fox 64 again, or a game like that, can we at least give it like a good art style? How about we keep a lot of the core gameplay of Star Fox 64? Maybe we put in some new fucking levels for once, but then give all the characters the puppet aesthetic that we had back in the first game. Wouldn't it be fun to have like these realistic spaceships, and then like every time it cuts to one of the characters that's talking to you on your comms, it's just like a fucking Muppet? that would give the game so much more charm and personality than this like lifeless Disney live action fish looking ass motherfucker. Second is we bring in James McCloud, Star Fox's dad. We do a Star Fox -1. Since Nintendo seems adverse to trying to figure out how to tell a story either in this original timeline or even something that just takes place after 64, what if we instead go backwards in the timeline and talk about the first Star Fox team, which consisted of Fox's dad, James, just a regular ass name, peppy hair, but he's like a little bit younger, and Pigma Dengar, yeah, Star Wars ass name over here, who eventually betrays Star Fox and goes to join Wolf and Company. But they were around for a while before James died, and they had presumably all kinds of adventures that you could pull from. If you had any balls, you could also end the game in a Halo Reach type setting where James ends up dying when he gets betrayed by Pigma. I think that could give some like fun dramatic irony to the thing where that your guy is going to die, but maybe throughout the adventures you start to like Pigma a little bit. Maybe we see a different side to him, and then which makes his betrayal hit even harder. Also, I have to mention this, in one of the F-Zero games, there's a character named James McCloud, and he looks like James McCloud the Fox from Star Fox games, except that he's like a guy. This is never explained, but possibly he has some connection to the James McCloud from the Star Fox series, or it's just a weird reference. But in any case, that's an idea. You could play with that. Maybe there's a mini game where you go and meet Mr. F-Zero himself, and you race him or something. I don't know. fucking do something with F-Zero. That's a series they don't do anything with, but at least you get to play Star Fox 64 again for the third time for the fourth time. And my last idea is to just make Star Fox Assault 2. I agree that Star Fox Command becomes kind of a problem if you consider it canon. Not necessarily because it does anything wrong, but because it pushes the story forward too much, and also nobody played it. I say just kind of ignore this one and make a game that takes place right after Star Fox Assault. Make the core team Fox, Falco, Slippy, and Crystal. Peppy can still be in the game if you want, but keep him in more of a like semi-retired mentor type role, and have gameplay similar to Kid Icarus Uprising. That kind of nailed the balance of on-rail shooting and 3D walk-around shoot stuff in that game. So just copy that. You don't need to get Sakurai involved to make a Star Fox game, and you can steal ideas from yourself. It's fine. You do it all the time. Plus, I think we're leaving furry money on the table by not having Crystal in the series. Although, if you think about it, Crystal as a character assumes that the Star Fox fan base was straight to begin with, which assumes a lot about people that are into foxes. But Nintendo really seems to like completely forget that this game exists and was good. Because after this point, they're just like, fuck, we gotta make a Star Fox game. How do we do it? Just make 64 again. And they've been doing that specifically for over 15 years. Shake it up a little. Make some new levels. Have us explore new galaxies and new star systems and new civilizations. I don't know. Do something other than just Star Fox 64 again. And if you're gonna do that, at least make the characters look like weird-ass puppets or something. Anyways, I've talked for way too long about Star Fox, but I like these games. I think they're fun. I think they have a weird appeal to them. This is the timeline. Oh yeah, where does Starlink fit on the timeline? I forgot to say that. It doesn't matter. You could say it takes place in the Star Fox Zero timeline if you want, because I think the characters are slightly closer in design to those ones. Or you could say it takes place in the 64 timeline, like between these two games or something. It's also probably not canon to any of these timelines, because like it's a different ass thing altogether. But I kind of like including it because I think the concept of Fox existing in like a regular ass galaxy with humans in it is kind of funny. That's it. That's all the Star Fox stuff that's up to now. Will the new Star Fox game be any good? I don't know. I probably won't be playing it. Will it bomb and then Nintendo will be like, oh, well, I guess people don't like Star Fox, and then they'll wait like 10 more years and then do another remake of Star Fox 64? Probably. But you know, maybe every now and then they'll throw them in some other random game that they're developing. Mario Galaxy 3? How about Star Fox is in that? Why not? Fuck it. Anyways, that's the end of the video. Go subscribe and watch something else if you want. Or don't. I'm not your dad. But I am Fox's dad. Call me James. James McLeod. Pew!